The first thing I noticed was that the attendant's name tag said Marcus, but when I called him that, he didn't answer right away. There was a half-second delay, like he had to remember it. His eyes stayed on me the whole time he rang up my coffee, and his hand shook just enough that the change spilled across the counter instead of into my palm. I remember thinking that was strange. I didn't yet know how much worse strange could get, or that I'd spend the next 3 hours locked in my car in that parking lot, watching the door of that gas station and praying he wouldn't come out. I want to back up, because none of this makes sense without the drive. I was heading from Flagstaff to Albuquerque, a trip I'd made twice before for work, always during the day, always with music loud enough to keep me awake. This time I left late, almost 8 at night, because a meeting ran over, and I didn't want to burn another night in a hotel I couldn't expense. My girlfriend at the time, Rachel, texted me around 9 asking if I was going to drive straight through. I told her yeah, I'd stop for gas somewhere around the state line and push on. She sent back a thumbs up and a reminder to text her when I got in. I didn't think anything of it. People say that to each other all the time. The highway out there gets lonely fast once you're past the last real town. It's 2 lanes, no shoulder lighting, just your headlights and whatever the moon's doing that night. That night it wasn't doing much. Heavy cloud cover, no stars, and the kind of dark that makes your headlights feel weaker than they should. My gas light came on around 11:15. I had maybe 40 miles left in the tank, which normally wouldn't worry me, but my GPS was showing nothing but empty road for the next 60. I remember the exact feeling in my stomach when I saw that gap on the map. Not panic, just this low hum of unease, the kind you get when you realize you don't have a plan B. Then I saw the sign. Faded yellow, half the paint peeled off, sitting on a metal pole that looked like it had been bent by wind more than once. Gas, food, 2 miles. I took the exit before I even finished reading it. The place was smaller than I expected. 1 pump island, 2 pumps, a low building with fluorescent lights buzzing behind dusty windows. A single security light out front swayed slightly on its wire, even though I couldn't feel any wind through my cracked window. Off to the side, there was an old ice machine with a padlock hanging open, and a payphone that I hadn't seen a working one of in maybe 15 years. I pulled up to the pump closest to the door. My headlights swept across the windows as I turned, and for just a second, I thought I saw someone standing at the far end of the store, past the register, near where the restrooms would be. When I looked again, straight on, there was nobody there. I told myself it was a mannequin or a cardboard cutout, one of those cardboard beer ads shaped like a person. Gas stations have those all the time. I didn't think much more about it. I got out, and the air hit me first. It was colder than it should have been for early October in that part of the state, and it smelled like ozone, like right before a storm, except the sky wasn't doing anything. No wind either, which made the swaying security light even stranger now that I was standing under it. The pump wouldn't take my card. I tried twice, got the same red X and beep, so I walked toward the store to pay inside. That's when I first saw Marcus through the glass door. He was standing behind the counter, very still, watching me walk up. Not in a friendly way, not in an unfriendly way either. Just watching, the way you'd watch weather roll in. The bell above the door jingled when I walked in, too loud in that quiet building. The lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering just slightly, just enough to notice out of the corner of your eye and then convince yourself you imagined it. "Pump's not taking cards," I said. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, card reader's been down since Tuesday, cash only." I checked my wallet. $11. Not enough to get me the rest of the way, but enough to get me close. And I figured I'd find another station down the line with a working machine. I told him I wanted 11 on pump 1, and he nodded again. That same slow, deliberate movement, like his neck was stiff. That's when I saw the name tag, Marcus, and that's when I said his name back to him, just making conversation, the way you do. "Thanks, Marcus." The pause, the half-second too long before he said, "Yeah, no problem." I grabbed a coffee from the machine while he processed the pump. Black. Needed the caffeine badly at that point. When I brought it to the counter, his hand shook, ringing it up, and the change spilled everywhere. He apologized, gathered it, and his fingers were cold when they brushed mine, handing it back. Not cool. Cold, like he'd been holding ice. I told myself people have bad nights. Maybe he'd been sick. Maybe the graveyard shift out here just did something to a person over time. All that silence, all that dark outside the windows. I've worked night shifts before. They get in your head. I went out to pump my gas. The night had gotten quieter somehow, if that's possible. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own pulse in your ears. The pump clicked along slow, the numbers ticking up cent by cent, and I stood there checking my phone, no signal, just one bar that kept dropping to nothing and back. That's when I heard the tapping. It came from inside the store, 3 soft taps against the glass, evenly spaced. I looked up. Marcus was standing at the window now, not behind the counter anymore, just standing there with his palm flat against the glass, looking out at me. Not smiling, not frowning, just looking, the way he'd looked when I first walked up. I gave him a small wave, the automatic kind you do when you don't know what else to do. And he didn't wave back. He just kept his hand on the glass and watched me finish pumping gas. $11 doesn't buy much gas. The pump clicked off faster than I wanted it to, and I stood there a second longer than necessary, not wanting to go back inside, not wanting to get in my car and be alone on that highway either. I decided to use the bathroom before I left, since who knew how long until the next stop. The bathroom was around the side of the building, an exterior door with a key attached to a big block of wood, the kind gas stations use so people don't walk off with them. Marcus handed me the key without a word when I asked, his cold fingers brushing mine again. And I remember specifically not wanting to touch his hand a second time. The bathroom light took a moment to flicker on, buzzing just like the ones inside. It was a single room, sink, toilet, one small window painted shut, frosted glass so you couldn't see out or in. I did my business quickly, wanting to get back to my car, back to the highway, back to normal. While I was washing my hands, I heard footsteps outside the door. Slow, deliberate, stopping right outside. I froze, water still running. "Almost done," I called out, assuming it was Marcus needing the bathroom for something, or maybe just walking past. No response. The footsteps didn't move away either. They just stopped, right outside that door, and stayed there. I dried my hands on my jeans because I didn't want to spend another second in that room. I opened the door slowly, and there was nobody there. Just the empty side lot, my car sitting under that swaying security light, the desert stretching out dark and flat beyond the property line. I told myself it had been the wind, even though there wasn't any. I told myself a lot of things that night that I didn't fully believe, because believing the alternative felt worse. I walked back around to return the key. Marcus was behind the counter again, exactly where he'd been when I first walked in, like he'd never moved, like the version of him at the window a few minutes ago had been someone else entirely. I set the key on the counter and thanked him, and he said, "You have a good night now," in a voice that didn't match his face, warmer than his expression, almost rehearsed, like he'd practiced saying it in a mirror. I got in my car, locked the doors, which I don't normally do at a gas station, but that night I did it without thinking. I put the key in the ignition and looked up through the windshield one more time. Marcus was standing in the doorway of the store now, the bell above the door frozen mid-swing like he'd just walked through it, and he wasn't looking at me. He was looking past my car, toward the dark edge of the lot where the desert started, where there was nothing but scrub brush and empty highway for miles. I followed his gaze without meaning to, and for just a moment, I thought I saw a second figure standing out there in the dark, past the reach of the security light, tall and still. When I looked back at the doorway, Marcus was gone. The bell was swinging normally again, like nothing had happened. I didn't start the car right away. I sat there, hands on the wheel, telling myself I was tired, that I'd been driving too long, that my eyes were playing tricks the way they do late at night on empty roads. I've talked myself out of scarier things than a gas station attendant standing in a doorway. Then my phone buzzed. One bar of signal, just enough for a text to come through. It was from an unknown number, no name attached, no contact saved. The message said, "He's not Marcus. Marcus doesn't work Tuesdays. Drive." I read it twice, 3 times. My hands had gone cold, colder than the night air had any right to make them. I looked back up at the store. The lights were still buzzing behind the glass, the aisles empty, the counter empty too now. No sign of anyone. I started the car. I didn't wait to see if the engine would idle smooth or check my mirrors the way I always do. I put it in reverse, backed out too fast, and pulled onto the highway, going the wrong direction for a solid quarter-mile before I found a spot to turn around. My headlights the only light for miles in either direction. I drove 11 miles on $11 of gas, watching my fuel gauge drop toward empty, more scared of stopping than I was of running out. I found a real station eventually, a Chevron with fluorescent lights and a bored teenager behind the counter scrolling on his phone, and I have never in my life been so relieved to see a stranger who didn't look at me twice. I called Rachel from the parking lot, hands still shaking, and told her what happened. She asked the obvious question, the one I couldn't answer. Who sent the text? I checked the number again while we were on the phone. It didn't have an area code I recognized, and when I tried calling it back, it rang twice and then gave me a tone I'd never heard before. 3 flat beeps and silence. The number doesn't work anymore. I've tried it since, more times than I'd like to admit. It just rings into nothing now. I looked up the gas station later, once I had real signal again. Once I was safe in a motel room with the deadbolt thrown and the chain lock on too. It came up on the map, same location, same name. The reviews were sparse, most of them old, complaining about the card reader being down. One from about a year back mentioning a night clerk named Marcus who was, quote, the friendliest guy out there, always remembers your order. I never found anything else. No news stories, no missing persons, nothing that would explain the man behind that counter, or the figure in the dark, or the text from a number that doesn't exist anymore. I still don't know who sent that message, or how they knew where I was, or how they knew the name on a tag that I'd only just read myself, seconds before I said it out loud. I've gone back and forth on it more times than I can count, trying to find some explanation that lets me sleep easier. The one thing I keep coming back to, the thing I can't shake no matter how many times I try to rationalize it, is that the message didn't say, don't stop there. It didn't say, be careful. It said, drive. Like whoever sent it knew exactly what I'd already seen, and knew I was already sitting in that parking lot deciding whether or not I was safe. I haven't driven that stretch of highway since. I take the long way now, even though it adds almost 2 hours to the trip. Rachel thinks I'm being paranoid. Maybe I am. But every time I pass a gas station at night, empty lot, one light swaying over the pumps, I find a reason to keep driving instead. There was a man sitting in the corner of that gas station who never once blinked. I watched him for almost 4 minutes straight, standing in the snack aisle pretending to read the back of a chip bag, and his eyes never closed, not even once. That's the kind of detail your brain tries to talk you out of noticing. I wish I'd listened to it that night and just walked out the door. Instead, I stayed for another 20 minutes, and those 20 minutes are the reason I still sleep with a light on. I need to explain how I ended up there in the first place. I was driving home from my cousin's wedding in Reno, heading back to Sacramento, a drive I'd done plenty of times before. It should have taken about 3.5 hours. I left the reception late, close to midnight, because my cousin kept pulling me onto the dance floor, and I didn't want to be the guy who ducked out early. My phone was down to 11% by the time I got in the car, and I made the mistake of not plugging it in right away. I figured I'd charge it once I hit the highway. I was wrong about a lot of things that night, but that one cost me the most. About an hour in, somewhere past the state line, my phone died completely. No GPS, no music, nothing but the sound of my tires on the road and my own thoughts, which after 2 glasses of champagne and a long day were not great company. I wasn't drunk, just tired in that specific way where your eyes start playing tricks on the white lines. My gas gauge was already sitting under a quarter tank, and I hadn't passed a station in a while. The highway out there gets thin fast once you're past the casinos, just dark hills on either side, and the occasional truck passing going the opposite direction, headlights blinding for a second, and then gone. I saw the glow before I saw the building. A tall sign, lit up bright against all that darkness, the kind of light that feels almost aggressive when everything around it is so quiet. I pulled off without thinking twice. The lot was empty except for one car parked way off to the side, nose pointed toward the exit, like whoever owned it wanted to leave in a hurry. I didn't think much of it at the time. People park weird all the time. Inside, the lights were bright. Too bright, honestly. the kind of fluorescent white that makes everyone look a little sick. There was a young guy behind the counter, maybe early 20s, wearing a uniform polo that looked a size too big for him. He gave me a small nod when I walked in, the kind of nod that means nothing, just reflex. And then there was the man in the corner. He was sitting in one of those little plastic booth setups gas stations sometimes have near the coffee machines. Just him, no food or drink in front of him, hands flat on the table. Older guy, maybe 60, wearing a jacket that didn't match the weather, too heavy for a night that wasn't even that cold. He was facing the door, which meant he was facing me the whole time I walked in. I gave him the same nod I'd give anyone, and he didn't nod back. He just watched me, still as a photograph. I told myself he was waiting for someone, or resting, or just an old guy who liked sitting in gas stations at midnight. People do stranger things. I walked to the back to grab my charger cable from my bag, then over to the snack aisle because my stomach was doing that hollow thing it does after a few drinks. That's when I started really watching him. Not on purpose at first, just glances every few seconds. And that's when I noticed he wasn't blinking. I want to be fair to myself here. I know eyes can look like they're not blinking when really you're just not catching the exact moment. I told myself that. I stood there testing it, watching the clock on my phone screen once it had enough charge to turn on, timing it. 4 minutes. Not one blink in 4 minutes. I walked up to the counter to pay for my snacks and asked the kid working there, quiet, almost embarrassed to be asking, if the guy in the booth was doing okay. He glanced over, just for a second, and then looked back at me with an expression I didn't like. Careful. Like he was choosing his next words. He's been in here a while, the kid said. Since before my shift started. How long's your shift been, I asked. 6 hours, he said. I looked back at the man, still hadn't moved, hands still flat on the table, eyes still open, still facing the door, facing me now specifically, since I was standing right in his line of sight. I paid for my snacks and told the kid I needed to use the restroom before heading out. He pointed me toward a hallway at the back, past the coffee station, past the booth where the man was sitting. I had to walk within a few feet of him to get there. I kept my eyes forward, the way you do when you pass someone unsettling on the street, pretending you don't see them so they don't have a reason to say anything to you. It almost worked. I was 2 steps past the booth when I heard his voice, low, calm, almost gentle. You don't want to be out on that road tonight. I stopped. I don't know why I stopped instead of just walking faster. Something about the way he said it, not threatening, more like a warning from someone who genuinely didn't want something bad to happen to me. I turned halfway. Why's that? I asked. He tilted his head slightly, the first movement I'd seen from him since I walked in. There's a stretch about 6 miles past here, he said. Real dark, no lights for a long way. People see things out there, or things see them. I laughed a little, the nervous kind of laugh, and told him I'd be fine. I just needed gas and I'd be on my way. He nodded slowly and went back to staring straight ahead, hands flat on the table, and I went into the bathroom feeling like I needed to wash something off, even though nothing had touched me. The bathroom was small, 1 stall, flickering light overhead that buzzed just loud enough to notice. I splashed water on my face, told myself I was just tired, that the champagne and the long drive were doing something to my head. I looked up into the mirror to dry my face on a paper towel, and for 1 second, just one, I thought I saw him standing behind me in the reflection. I spun around. Nobody there. Just the closed stall door and the buzzing light. I left that bathroom faster than I've left anywhere in my life. When I walked back out, the booth was empty. No man, no jacket, nothing. I asked the kid at the counter if he'd seen where the guy went, and he looked genuinely confused. Said he hadn't seen anyone leave, hadn't heard the door either, and the door had a bell on it that rang every single time. He was sure of that. He'd have heard it. I paid for my gas fast, pumped it faster, kept glancing at the empty lot, at the one car still parked with its nose toward the exit, at the dark hills beyond the lights. My hands were shaking enough that I fumbled the gas cap twice. I got back on the highway, plugged my phone in, and about 6 miles down the road, exactly 6 miles, my headlights caught something on the shoulder. A shape, tall, standing completely still, facing the road, facing my car as I passed. I didn't slow down. I didn't look twice. I kept my eyes forward and drove faster than I should have, checking my mirrors every few seconds until the road curved and I couldn't see that stretch of shoulder anymore. I made it home about 2 hours later, checked every lock in my apartment twice, and didn't sleep until the sun came up. I've thought about going back during the daytime, just to see the place in normal light, to prove to myself it was just a gas station like any other. I haven't done it. Some part of me doesn't want to know if that booth is empty during the day, or if there's someone sitting in it no matter what time you walk in. What I keep coming back to isn't the shape on the shoulder or the reflection in the mirror. It's the 6 miles. He knew the exact distance before I'd even asked him anything specific. He just knew, like he'd watched it happen before, more than once, and was simply telling me where it would happen again.